Handprint Series Part 2, ESD and School Subject Disciplines, Action Learning Theory. One of the key challenges in any form of education for sustainability or a sustainable future is the concept of sustainability. And Hoffman and Ziegler asked the question, what learning actions are needed to navigate pathways to future sustainability? Well, to navigate these pathways, we need a concept of sustainability. So they went to the United Nations, UNESCO, 2014 data on sustainability, where the Human Development Index was mapped against the ecological footprint, quality of life against the impact that people are having on the planet, to come up with an area that would be needed for humans to be able to sustain themselves with an ecological footprint that did not exceed the sustainability, and also with drawing on Kate Raworth's donut economics, with the idea of a safe and a just space where there was a balance between quality of life and impact on the planet. So if we take India, South Africa, Mexico and Germany, they're all very different, and they all have something to do, we all have something to do to actually navigate, change our ways of doing things to get into a future safe and a just space on the planet. And the first thing we need to do in the case of India, South Africa and Mexico is increase quality of life. Not in the case of Germany, because quality of life is already high. It's so high that they have to decrease their lifestyle impact, as does Mexico and South Africa as well. So it's the interplay of maintaining quality of life and decreasing impact that is critically important for our handprint care work, looking after others to best care for ourselves and the surroundings that we all share. So we came up with this little idea of circles of care and as places where we will deliberate future and change. Now, to do so, we needed a simple way of reminding each other that what we need to do is we need to look at the quality of life that we feel that is important to us, and we need to at the same time decrease the impact that this quality of life is having. So in the circles of care, it was very useful to have this little reminder that there's this trade-off between quality of life and impact. And this comes into a lot of the deliberations on sustainability in our work. So we looked at a schema of action learning in school subject disciplines for this and produced a circle of care around it. And the idea is that we've got cultural and biological history, which comes to schools in school subject disciplines. And then what we need to do is tune in the learners in terms of their heritage and in terms of the subject knowledge, so that what they're able to do is to engage the world, to talk about things, to think about what's happening around them, and to take action together for a sustainable future. So the traditions of understanding that they have come into how they come to interact in the world on co-engaged action learning pathways. And this was a very useful image for a deliberative workspace coming out of the Vygotskian tradition of cultural historical activity theory for approaching the work that we're doing. In the cognitive science, a rationale for co-engaged learning actions within a common workspace has been coming out fairly recently, and the idea of this human beings have this global workspace, and in this global workspace our consciousness functions within a common workspace or a pool of simultaneous perception, what we see around us, memory, what we remember, motivation, the purposes that we have, the language that allows us to represent and express ideas in words, and understanding the conceptual grasp that we've got in the planned actions. And this idea is very, very useful for scoping the learning that we're trying to achieve in the work that we're doing. Because if we're able to achieve this, this allows us to describe, grasp, and approach what we see, to respond to what other people say, and to do and to remember and plan depending on what we want and what we know. So this global workspace is a space for active learning, individuals and in the company of others. And if we take this into the emotions and also cognitive science work on the senses and the emotions, these shape our learning actions. And cognitive sciences describe how emotions are made and point to a predictive functioning of our cognitive processes, that we tend to work in ways that enable us to predict and explore things. And Feldman Barrett reports how in every waking moment your brain uses past experience organized in concepts to guide your actions and give your sensations meaning. Your brain issues a storm of predictions, simulates their consequences as if they were present, and checks and corrects these predictions against actual sensory input. And she comes up with this idea of that we predict, that we simulate or imagine, we compare, and we resolve in this prediction loop. So this is some of the work that's coming out. That once predictions are correct enough, they not only create perception and action, but they also explain the meaning of the sensations that we have. This is your brain's default mode, she says, and marvelously your brain does not just predict the future, it can imagine the future at will. And here is a very useful concept for active learning, that we want to support the learners to be able to predict and imagine things in the work that we're doing. So the question that comes up is, can ESD play out as predictive cycles of care, where we develop the competences to recognize, assess, and act on matters of concern? So ESD in school subjects as predictive workspaces of deliberative learning and care is really interesting if we take this idea of circles of care. And then we look at deliberative process of co-engaged learning is what we're trying to mediate amongst the students in a sustainable futures workspace. This is quite an interesting concept where the students can actually deliberate future sustainability and deliberate environment and sustainability concerns together, trying to sustain quality of life, what is important to us, and also trying to decrease lifestyle impact so that we can define future and just spaces for living together on a sustainable planet. So in ESD as ethics-led learning in school subject disciplines, we now have looked at task sequencing and action learning theory. And the next is part 3, to explore ESD and ethics-led learning that can be activated in school subject disciplines. And once again, here are some of the references that were referred to in this part 2 of this 5-part series.